Welcome, Ethan. Welcome to the Architectural Technologist.
Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm really good. This is our first real podcast. I wanted to look at the digital literacy of the modern student. One of the things I noticed when I was a tutor, the classic was I would help a student. We were using ArchiCAD at the time, and the student would have trouble finding their file. And I would say to the student, "Where did you store it?" And they would say, "I stored it in ArchiCAD." And this is not the way we store information. We don't store it in ArchiCAD. We were using ArchiCAD to create the file, and when we go save, it saves it somewhere on our computer. And I know that students might find it difficult to think of themselves as digitally illiterate. They're so used to their phones, they're so used to making calls and doing all the apps on their phone. But when we start to get them to use Excel or Word or Google Documents, that becomes for them difficult because they don't remember where they stored these things. I think Google Documents is easier than Word or Excel because Google Documents does create a Google Drive. Everything is stored in the Google Drive. So that's easy. You just have to look through your drive and find it. But it was this thing, Ethan, I couldn't understand how they don't get taught where to store information or how a computer stores information.
I know that because in primary and secondary schools in New Zealand and Singapore, they were encouraged to use Google Docs, Chromebooks. Chromebooks are connected to Google Docs. So they grew up like that. And the generation is in that way. And when they convert to Windows system, because polytechnics and also Microsoft Words, all the CAD software or BIM software, they use different kind of file management system. So they are not accustomed to it. And I also have the similar problems at schools and teaching how to find their file. And some of the students, they just keep on, for example, because they are accustomed to use web browser because Google Doc works on web browser. Google Sheets works on web browser. So they use web browser to do the word processings and spreadsheets and that kind of thing. So things like they don't even need to hit save button. It's already saved. And the Microsoft Word system works differently. Now what happened is Microsoft Office 365 also have a cloud system. So it's getting a bit easier for them. But the thing is they need to know the file management system when they work for BIM and CAD software because it works differently. Because you need to make sure where the file is saved in the computer natively. So I think there are BIM cloud. Yep. But that's another topic. So you need to do a subscriptions like Windows 365. So yeah, there are that kind of some basic skills are missing. And when we, as a tutor at Polytechnics, I had to teach them same experience like as you do. So that's what happened. And yeah, some basic skills are lacking. And also I had to teach how to do Microsoft Words or how to make a contents and referencing, etc. So that's part of my duty, even though I am a tutor to teach architectural technology or sometimes quantity surveying, other things. But I need to make sure the students make the proper documentation. So if the student can produce proper documentation, it's good for their life and also easy for me to mark and check the topics. So that's how is it?
Yeah, I actually got AI to generate some notes for today's
Yeah.
podcast, and I can read it. It says that like a large segment of students and new hires grew up using tablets and smartphones, which abstract away the traditional file system, basic directory structures, and the nuances of desktop operating systems. They're adept at using apps, but struggle with file management, creating folders, navigating network drives, or understanding the differences between saving a document and closing a browser tab, which is exactly what you're saying. And these are the things that I noticed that the students are just not getting that information. When I wrote my first Vectorworks manual back in 2000, I actually had a chapter on file management. What is a folder? How do we store stuff? What is a hard drive? Where do we put information? And I had all these images like you have a folder and you put documents inside the folder and then you put folders into a drawer because it becomes like your operating system becomes like a drawer system, like a big filing cabinet. And I had all these images and I got told, no, Jonathan, this is old stuff. No one needs to be taught this anymore. And yet I get to see students coming out of schools and they don't have that information. I think it's this smartphone does all the work for you. automatically saving. As you say, with a web browser, it's automatically saving the information. Google automatically saves everything you change. So they don't get used to that idea of where stuff is stored. And I had the classic case of, oh, I saved it in ArchiCAD. There's a whole computer system. And then, of course, there's the whole thing about backing up, but we won't go into that. So I think that there's a whole lot of this basic information. And my expectation as a tutor was that the students would know some of this basic digital literacy from the beginning because they got taught. But I think your point was what I wasn't understanding is that the smartphones, the browser led stuff, the Chromebook, teaching students on a Chromebook in high school didn't allow them to appreciate the nuances of file structures. Now, why is it important? You go to an office and it's working in Revit, Vectorworks, CAD, whatever, chief architect. Where's that file stored? Where can your employer look for the file that you've been working on and open that to check your work? You need to know where to store information, how to store it. Like even file naming, you just can't call everything Untitled 1 or Untitled 2. You've got to give it accurate file names. You've got to give it accurate dates on your files so that they can be seen easily. And I've worked with lots of different architects on developing a file naming structure that might have the job number, the street name, the client name, the date, so that we can store this information accurately, where to put it. And people who are digitally literate have no trouble navigating a complex web of folder structures. But I think that we're really doing a disservice. I'm sad that you had to teach your students this.
It's better for their life, I think. That's how I put it, because they have to, when they go to the architectural office and they will face that kind of filing systems, how to manage the files. So I teach them. So hopefully they will appreciate it over time. And I think while I noticed that the first few months they struggle, even the months they struggles. After that, after first semester, second semester, they know how to navigate around and formattings and etc. So that's much better. And for example, I have not just a young students, I have a students, she is over 50 plus, and she got an email with attachment, and she click it, and what the files automatically opens on the browser, and she just she read it from the browser, and whatever she needs to change, she change it. But in the classroom, I was doing demonstrations using let's say Microsoft Words. The file was Microsoft Word files, and I was demonstrating how the files and where the tab buttons are. And she had said, "Oh, where are the buttons?" Because the native apps, Microsoft Word apps, and the browser apps are different. The buttons and locations are different, and I didn't notice that. And then same things for the PDF files. It's same thing happens because PDF window readers, right? Well, PDF Pro and the browser are different. So there are limited things that she can do. So that kind of things. And and also I have a friend, 70 plus also. He keep on confusing like a browser software and the software in the computer. So yeah, there are different levels, like young children's 50 years old and 70 plus, and they have the same problem. So I think the companies like Google's and Microsoft, they try to take out the nuance and make it simplify. But there are some legacy systems, and these legacy systems are still around us. And if you walk professionally, you still need to depend on these legacy system. And that makes a lot of problems when they come back to the school and they need to use that kind of legacy system, and that had a tough work.
I don't think I'd call it a legacy system, but it's the storing of information.
Mhm.
Because if you start building apps for an office, then you need to know where to store each little bit and where each bit gets. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about basic saving your file on
Yep.
your computer so that you can find it again, not just putting everything on the desktop like I do sometimes. When I take screenshots, Ethan, I just put them all on the desktop unless it's for a document. But if I'm creating a written manual and I want to keep images for that manual, I will create a folder for the manual. I'll put all the files in there and I'll create a separate folder for all the images so that they're easy to find so that I can easily relink those images into my manuals. So I think that's really important, that the student gets taken away from that protected world of the tablet and the phone, the smartphone and the browser, and into the world where real storage is. Because if you're working on multiple projects, particularly if you're using something like AutoCAD, then you're going to have an XREF. Where's that XREF stored? Because its location is vital to make sure that when you open that file, the reference will open. And just that general thing of working in an office, being able to store stuff so that your boss can find it. That's not even including opening a Word document and learning how to make an automatic table of contents, learning how to use styles, that kind of stuff. And another thing that's come up recently with me was the differences in software. Is it software understanding spreadsheets? So I teach a couple of CAD programs, but Vectorworks has this ability to look for information. And you've got two choices. You can say, I want all criteria to be met, or some criteria. So we got this difference between and, this and that, or this or that. And this is a computer or a mathematical concept. This ability to find using two criteria. Is it both criteria, or is it just one, this one or that one? And that's a concept that's missing from a lot of people. And to me, I equate that to a digital literacy or a mathematical literacy, the ability to create spreadsheets, because spreadsheets are the beginning of programming. Take this number, multiply it by that number. Great. We've done some programming, if you like. That's what Max said last year when we interviewed Max. He said that starting computer programming is really spreadsheets where you can start to put that information in. And then we get into if statements, that kind of thing. So these are some of the skills that are missing. And I throw it back to the high school, really, Ethan. What's the purpose of high school? Is it to make people ready for life, or making people ready for university? Or what's the point? Because I see some of the things they teach and I'm wondering why.
It's different already, isn't it? Because a few years back, if you finish high school and you go into work and do administrative work, now it's like after you finish high school, nobody employ you. For example, you can only work at McDonald's, flipping burgers or making a barista. Even you want to do work as a barista, you still need to go for another training. So the target of the school is quite different already nowadays. And so now the trade school, polytechnics, replace some duty and responsibility of high school, the traditional way. I think
Hmm.
so. Yeah. But what about unis? Uni is a
The,
different.
yeah, university is different. So university expects you to have this digital literacy
Mhm.
because they just expect you to go to the next step.
Yeah.
So let's take it to the next stage then.
Yeah.
If the students have got this lack of digital literacy, how does that affect when they're starting to work with BIM programs like ArchiCAD and Revit and Vectorworks? Because there's this steep learning curve where they have to develop knowledge. So I think, Ethan, that there is a responsibility for high schools to develop some of this digital literacy. I'm not sure whether the teachers need retraining to help develop it or whether the Chromebook is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
When I was a tutor, I always felt that it was the high school's job to teach that, but I would then try to teach the students the skills they need to develop, as you say, good quality documentation in Word. Because there are techniques in things like Word and Excel and Google Docs that really speed you up if you knew that those things were there. And I always tried to teach that because, as you said, it's really important that you upskill your students to make them ready for their job. And if they haven't got that knowledge, it was our job to give it to them. And I just don't think schools, particularly if they're using Chromebooks, have the ability to teach the digital literacy that we were talking about, the nuances of the filing system. All right. Maybe next time we should talk about how this relates to learning BIM.
Okay. See you next week.
Ethan, it was
And
great to see you again. I'm really happy to get these going again.
don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.
See you next week, Ethan.
See you next week. Bye.